Hello and welcome to this virtual roundtable in which we'll hear from several TC alumni living in some of the regions most notably impacted by COVID-19. You may recall that in April, we convened this very same panel of alumni to check in with our community members around the world as they began to encounter the virus, and we documented their experiences. So we thought it would be a good exercise to check in 6 months later. And we're just gonna go quickly around with self-introductions, starting from the west to the east. So we'll start with Johanna Brody in San Francisco.
Good morning, I'm Joanna Brody. I am here in the San Francisco Bay Area. I graduated from Teachers College in 2011. I studied curriculum and teaching in the Department of Elementary Education. I am currently a supervisor with Bay Area Teacher Training Institute. I work with elementary school teachers, supporting them as they earn their master's degree. And thank you. Thank you for having me again.
Thanks for being with us. So now we'll come over to New York City.
Good morning. My name is Jeffrey Putman. I'm currently the Vice President for Academic and Student Affairs at SUNY Downstate Health Sciences University in Brooklyn, New York. And I have actually 3 TC degrees, all from the program in higher and post-secondary education, including a doctorate.
And we'll go down to the Southern Hemisphere, down in São Paulo, Brazil.
Hi, everyone. I'm Leticia Lyle. I graduated from the Curriculum and Teaching program as well, in the Elementary Inclusive program in 2011. I got my master's from TC, and right now I live in São Paulo, Brazil. I recently started an ed tech company, as well as an elementary and middle school that opened its doors on February 10th, as our school year starts in the beginning of the year. And we've literally seen COVID the whole school year. So this is where I'm coming from, my contribution here.
Yes. And moving over to our representative from Europe in Rome.
Hi everyone, my name is Vasily Popov. I graduated from TC, got my master's there in 1995 in higher education administration. Currently I'm in Rome, Italy. I work for the United Nations in the organization called Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN. And I'm the Deputy Director of the Office of Strategy, Budget and Resource Management. Thank you.
Thanks for being with us. And over to China in Shanghai.
Hi everyone, this is Kevin from Shanghai. I graduated in 2015 with a degree in developmental psychology, and I'm running an international school in Shanghai now, which was largely affected by COVID. Hope to tell you more about it soon.
We'll be back just in a few minutes to get your full story. And last but certainly not least, from Seoul, Korea.
Hello everyone, I'm Joohee Son. I'm class of 2013. My major was instructional technology. So I got a doctorate degree from TC and also master degree also in the same department. Good to see you again, all of you.
Thank you all for being here. We're just so lucky to have such amazing alumni that are always willing to come together and help us to sort of take a closer look at what things are happening, and also to inform one another and just remind us that we truly do have a global community and we're here for one another and want to be part of this process together and work together to move forward. So to dive in, I'm going to start by putting things in context. When we last gathered, 780,000 worldwide cases had been confirmed and over 37,500 deaths have been recorded. To date, the novel coronavirus has infected more than 31.7 million people and killed more than 970,000 worldwide. Efforts to curtail this global pandemic have led to entire nations enforcing lockdowns, widespread halts of international travel, mass layoffs, and battered financial systems. So we're going to check in now to see how daily life has changed for each of our alumni. So I'm going to start with Kevin, who, as we noted, was in Shanghai. And Kevin, we've seen that China has managed to largely contain this virus, and it seems that the recent cases have been linked to international travelers. So tell us what it's been like for you to not only be among the very first to experience this virus itself, but also maybe the return to normalcy. What has life been like for you over the past 6 months?
So back in the summer, it went back to normal already. So people weren't wearing masks anymore, and the government lifted most of the restrictions. So for example, we are starting to go to the gym, go to the movie theater, and there isn't any restrictions on like the seating. You don't have to seat one seat apart from another in the movie theater anymore. So everything is just back to normal. And I think in August, life is just like before COVID. Everything went back to normal. And now I think people don't even remember that it existed.
Really?
Yeah. So everything is back to normal. But with one exception, I think there are about 28 international schools in Shanghai which they provide education to foreigners. But these schools are heavily impacted by the COVID because foreigners aren't allowed to come back. And back in July, August, teachers were having troubles getting visas to come back because the Shanghai Municipal Education Commission in August, they allowed a few visas which apply to like the most important administrators of a school. So for example, the head of the school or like the head of a primary school, only they could apply for the visa to come back. But I think in September, they've allowed more people to come back. So right now, we almost have all of our teachers back. But because of COVID, some families chose to go back during the pandemic and they weren't able to return. So we see a drop of about 20 to 15% of the student population in every international school. So for example, if the American school had 3,000 students, this year they might only have 2,600. So all schools, all international schools are having a really tough time to get through this year.
Imagine that such a financial strain, and also your teachers might not be back, and that's certainly something that will affect your work. How have public schools and other schools, is everything again there? I mean, if you're going to the movies, I assume school life for public schools is just back to normal as it was before?
Yes, I think they still did like a pre-opening check. The government had a COVID group to do a full check before the school can reopen, and that was it.
Wow.
So all schools are back to normal.
That's just, I can't even imagine that world right now. So certainly that's something that I'm hoping one day will be a reality for us, but it's literally that far away in my brain that I can't quite comprehend that yet. But, and it's really encouraging to hear that the numbers have remained so low. So that's great. Is there any talk or buzz or worry about a spike coming back, or do you think that these numbers will continue to fall off and it'll remain contained? Is that sort of what you're hearing in terms of what will happen in China?
So what I'm hearing from the experts on the news, they're saying with the cold weather and with more indoor activities taking place during fall and winter, there might be another spike. But if we still keep the strict restrictions at our border and do the quarantines properly, then we are going to be fine.
Well, that's encouraging news, and a light at the end of the tunnel for the rest of us. So Joohee, you're in South Korea, which has been a country that's been held up as a model for its response to COVID-19. And it has also managed to maintain a relatively healthy economy during this time, but has recently been struggling to contain a new nationwide outbreak. So what has life been like for you in Seoul? What have you been experiencing over the last 6 months and starting to see now as these cases rise?
Okay, so thank you, Rosella. First of all, I forgot to introduce myself, what I'm doing now. So currently in Korea, I'm running 2 organizations. So one is Christian International School, and the other one is Academy. So Academy is from elementary to high schoolers, and the international school is now, this was the first year, so only for kinders. Okay, so, well, first of all, I can tell last 6 months, it was like a battlefield for me. So I would say that in Korea, there have been 2 attacks. So first attack, it was first of 4 months from the last week of February up to June. So 4 months, even for me, I had to delay to open up my school. So we couldn't even open up the school, but teachers were there. So I had to pay the salary to the teachers with no students. We were waiting and waiting and waiting because government just gave us a 2 weeks notice, like 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, maybe not. After 2 weeks, another 2 weeks, another 2 weeks. It became 4 months. So after 4 months, July and August became, like Kevin said, felt like went back to normal. So we were like enjoying outside activities. Some people even went to movie theaters. But I think some expert was warning us there will be second attack. So personally, I didn't want to believe second attack. But I would say that there was a second attack in Korea. Even though government went well, responded well for the first one, but the thing is that people started to feel relaxed and feel casually. So this time, the government gave us more stronger limitation because this time, government and many people could not trace where the virus came from. Because the first one, we could track down, oh, that person, went to some church, oh, that person traveled, right? But this time, we couldn't. So that made people so scared. So this time, even the bakery, cafe, everything closed down, and the library, school, definitely. So really, this 2 weeks, this month, really was scary. So for the first attack, I would say that when the people, when there was the number of the people, 100, more than 100, and the Korean people got scared. But this time, even one day became more than 400. So most cases, we couldn't know where it came from. So really should be careful. So after 2 weeks, almost everything closed down. And then the number became less than 100. And then government allowed to open up the cafe and the bakery. So, for the first one, I really want to say thank you for the video conferencing because, we had the video conferencing in April, right? So I could be encouraged by all of your, how you are doing in your country. I would say that everyone was working so hard, in anything. So it inspired me a lot. So I shared the stories with my teachers. So I told them, you know what, I had a video conferencing with Colombia and other people, and everyone was so making their best, but we should do something. So my teachers got inspired too. So we had a meeting and then we said, okay, let's do something. And then we decided to make online courses for the kids, even though they didn't come yet, but we were planning to do that for our kids in the classroom, but we made online courses, you know, and also even the payment, all the systems. So we could do that. And then this time, 2 weeks closing down again. So really, you know, frustrated. But I could have a chance to think about the long period of time, the online courses. So we started to find some problems, the online courses. You know, students got tired physically, and then not only about physical tiredness, the thing we are worried about is that the level, academic achievement is degraded because it cannot be compared to offline class, you know, the quality. So I thought about how we can catch the students' attention. So we decided to invest more, you know, money for making and providing the online, the programs with textbooks. For example, you know, when you open up the books through the Zoom class, and then some good textbook programs is connected to online source, which means we can see each page on the screen. So we can catch more attention, the kids. And also, you know, we hired a technician to prepare the online courses. But anyhow, I would say that I don't want to make, you know, Kevin, you know, so feel bad. But when you feel, you know, it's okay. And then we felt like that exactly, you know, in August, we are going back to normal life. You know, we even planned the travel, but suddenly it happened. So I think, yeah, we better be careful. Also, not just to scare, you know, just to be careful. Yeah, that's what happened in Korea.
Well, it's fascinating, right? And I think you bring up a few points, right? The idea of that cabin fever really sets in and people drop their guard. They feel a little more comfortable doing things. And so that's, you know, certainly I think something that keeps me up at night. And your other point, I'm so heartened to hear that this conversation, you know, inspired you and had some other benefits for you and your community in Seoul. And I think, you know, this pandemic has certainly done one thing, which is to tell us that we can operate in this strange virtual world. We may not love it and it may not be a true replacement, but it has really given us this opportunity to explore new ways to stay connected with our community. So I hope that this is one thing that does continue, is that, you know, whatever the situation might be, whatever we might want to convene a topic on, that we'll keep looking to our alumni to come together in these ways to find that inspiration and find those opportunities to collaborate and synergize and really improve our efforts worldwide. So that is the one silver lining that I really think has come out of it. But of course, Zoom fatigue is a real thing, and we can certainly understand why people are just done with technology at the end of the day. But if we can manage to harness it in a succinct and useful way that won't just, you know, wear us down, I think it has great potential for keeping our global community connected. So thank you for sharing your experiences.
Thank you.
So we'll move over to Vasily in Italy, which was hit early on by one of Europe's worst outbreaks. However, they managed to contain the contagion after the peak in March and April. But just last week, the WHO warned of a very serious situation unfolding again across the European region. We're also seeing that the median age of cases in Italy has gone down from 60 in early February to about 30 in August, but that's slowly creeping back up, and I think it's around 40 right now, and still expected to climb back towards the elderly population, especially as we talked about last time. The Italian community tends to be very social, and now that socialization has maybe started to focus inwards and will continue to be more family focused as we head into the colder months. So Vasily, tell us what you've been experiencing and what things are like for you today.
Thank you, Rosella. You summed it up nicely. Last time when we spoke, we were almost done with the strict measures of quarantine and everything. And indeed, we had the country opened around June, I believe. People could travel freely in Europe, and many people had a very nice vacation. And everyone was very social. So from having about 200 cases for a country of 40 plus million, we're back to 1,600, 1,500 cases now. The bell curve started going up in August. This is pretty much when people started coming from holiday vacations. The median age is indeed young. It's the crazy kids who go to discos, don't follow the precautions, and then come back and pass it to their parents and grandparents. The schools open gradually in Italy. The international schools opened in the beginning of September. The state schools, they go from north to south, I believe, and they have a schedule. So not to open in one big pop, they always follow waves every other week. So by now the schools are all open. We're all worried that this will make the number of cases go even higher, because school is naturally, kids bring all sorts of, every flu strain. When my kids were small, they brought every possible flu strain from school. So naturally, this may happen again. I must compliment the measures of not just international schools, the state schools, all the schools, that they implemented very strict measures. Some kids describe it as almost like a prison, because they cannot socialize, they're locked in their classes, they take turns one day, they alternate days at school, but it's better than sitting on top of your parents all day long in your apartment doing math with your dad, even though the dad might like it. So things are not improving, but we are not in strict quarantine. Some European countries are in quarantine already. UK is talking about something much more stricter. France, Italy is not there, almost said yet, but hopefully we'll never get there. So this is the current situation. Thank you. Over to you, Rosella.
Thank you for sharing that. So Leticia, down in Brazil, which has suffered one of the world's worst pandemic tolls, we see though that the government has responded to the crisis by distributing so much cash directly to citizens that poverty and inequality are approaching national historic lows. So I don't know if you can tell us if that's actually the case or if this is the media hyping things, but tell us what have things been like for you and what's your experience been in São Paulo?
Oh, wow. That is definitely not the case. I think there has been a lot more distribution of cash, but there's also an enormous low on employment. What did change is that economically, Brazil has historically have interest rates that were really high, and they reduced it to very low so that would get production back, but spending hasn't gone back. So Brazil has probably done the things you should not do in a pandemic workbook. The first thing is changing our education minister maybe 4 or 5 times, and health ministers as well as a definitely not coordinated view on what to do on safety measures or policies for returning. It's an election year, so November we have mayors and county elections. So our pandemic has definitely played all of the economic scenario, the political scenario, and then the pedagogical one. We have been right now the country that has had the longest distancing from school. We're approaching almost a full year. So school year started in mid-February, mid-March, we all went into lockdown. We don't have a summer break. So we only had a couple weeks of winter break. And right now we're approaching 7 months into online distance learning. And in that number, we have a very large number of people that have not had access. So they're literally out of school. I think that for the pedagogical and developmental view of resilience, it's disastrous. We have schools, and then I will tell you about mine, that have the condition and were able to actually come up with ideas and solutions for their school. But we have a lot of schools that did not. We have states that were able to provide good programs and go after ways of making sure that equity was being maintained. But the truth is that we're going to see the toll of this in a few months, because there has been a very unequal access to education in these past few months. I think that Joohee brought the cabin fever right now in such a distance, and remember, in the Southern Hemisphere, we haven't gone through summer, so it's been winter. The biggest toll right now that we're seeing is a really big hit on children's social and emotional development. There's been just reports everywhere of kids already getting in they passed on that rage, but Brazil was also the country that increased the most online gaming and online video games. So most kids have literally just left schoolwork and gone into recreational online, and that's because we've been away for so long that that's the social space that they found. So TikTok is bigger in Brazil than in China. Every social media that has invested in Brazil has made its money back, and it's a concern. I think we have, again, no scenario in sight in the city of São Paulo, and because of this political scenario, we've been pushed to maybe a possible partial, 30%, kind of what Vasily just said, return in mid-November, but the school year ends in the beginning of December. So it's very likely that kids will not see their school sites back this year. Most states have not returned. A lot of city municipalities have decided already to postpone this for next year. Together with all of this, there's also now, because we've been closed for so long, and a little bit of what Kevin went through, and a lot of students moved around, we have a number that's very scary. About 45% of early childhood centers are closing. So we'll not have those places next year because financially nobody was able to keep that up. And then that's going to overload our public system that still cannot take all of those early childhood students. So we might have children without schools and then ending up in more precarious organizations. So I think differently when Kevin said, no, life is back to normal. That's my headline is like, life is not back to normal. And I don't think it's gonna happen anytime soon. But again, in the midst of all of this, we've seen amazing stories of resilience, amazing stories of innovation happening in education, probably in different places than we thought we were going to have. So I think a lot of the ed techs came forth, but technology itself kind of goes back to the fact that we're humans and we need that contact. So pedagogy also had to step up. We've seen an increase in quality and depth of the discussion about education, methodologies, learning, that I don't think it would have been possible if we did not have this cataclysm that happened in Brazil in education and for such a long period. I think if we ended, if we had a kind of a return maybe 2 or 3 months ago, a lot of the push that has been happening right now went in a scene that we're not coming back, students need to connect to school, would not have happened. So I guess in the spirit of keeping up what TC teaches us that, we can learn from all situations, and, maybe we can't avoid what's happening, but we can certainly decide the next steps. I see right now education in Brazil as a definite think tank of how we can actually just think of that next step of education in large scale. We have 210 million people here in Brazil to figure it out. Everybody's still out of school. And I, just the last thing is all of our bars and gyms are open, and schools are not. So bars, gyms, malls, things are open. And parks are not open, and schools are not open. So I think that's also something to take back to the rest of the community, especially the international community, and see how those are things that we can either avoid or think about in our priorities, right? If education is at the center, even if, like Vasily said, we're doing this in a different way, shouldn't that be our priority? And how should we go about it?
Absolutely. And thank you for setting the record straight. When I read that original report, I thought, how is this even possible? So, once again, always be vigilant about where your media sources come from, right? We'll turn our attentions now to Jeffrey in New York. And so when we last spoke, New York City was the epicenter of the crisis here in the US. And even as the pandemic seemed to be controlled, tensions escalated as renewed attention to the high-profile deaths of Black Americans during the past decade and ongoing concerns about systemic racism in the criminal justice system came to a head. So in the midst of our coronavirus pandemic, which has disproportionately infected and killed Black people, the long-standing racial inequities have been exposed in every aspect of American life and forced a deep reckoning across society. So the streets of New York, which had been eerily empty in March and April, came alive with everything from peaceful protests and demonstrations that did turn violent, which did spread across the country. And yet the virus has been largely contained here, and some of the normalcy has returned to our beloved city. Restaurants have transformed into these charming street-side diners, and some of the museums and tourist attractions have even reopened with limited capacity. But Jeffrey, tell us what has life been like for you and your colleagues. I know New York has certainly been in the news for both elementary, K-12, and higher ed systems opening, not opening, being virtual, being hybrid. So tell us what life has been like for you and your colleagues over the last 6 months.
So thank you, Rosella. I think a lot of what you said is absolutely true. New York, the thing that's still different about New York, I would say, is that people haven't returned in the corporate world. So those of you who know New York know that most of Manhattan is full of corporate offices. And so those offices are still largely empty, which means that the businesses and the economy that supports that, and of course supports tourism, which also has fallen way off, is not there. But I would say the rest of the economy, when you go to the outer boroughs, where people live, it has really, I certainly wouldn't say it's returned to normal, but it really has returned more to normalcy, I would say. We still don't have indoor dining in New York City. They've said they're reopening it on September 30th, so next week. And the original plan was to have K-12 schools reopened a week ago or so. They've delayed that a couple of times because they want to get it right. But there's a lot of consternation about things that should have been, or that people feel should have been planned 4 months ago that weren't, or that, the government should have known this wasn't going to work. Why didn't they plan for alternatives back then? But I think overall, they're making those slow steps. We have in higher ed in New York State, the governor issued mandates about how our higher ed systems should reopen, colleges and universities, public and private. And most of us have opened some form of hybrid education where there's some students who are on campus, some students even who are living on campus with reduced capacity in residence halls. an education where there's still a lot of virtual, but some on-campus piece. Obviously, that depends on what kind of education is being provided. We here at Downstate, as a healthcare-centered institution, all of our clinical programs are in person fully, at least the clinical part of the programs, but much of the didactic part of the curriculum is being delivered virtually. So we've tried to make a balance of limiting the exposure of people to each other, so that you potentially limit the exposure of the virus to other people. But that being said, in New York, anyway, we've kept the virus transmission rates incredibly low. We've been below 1% transmission rates in New York, I think, except for one day for the last 2 months, despite the fact that states, even the states around us, and certainly other states in the country, have seen large spikes. We have in New York a travel restriction that requires quarantine for people who come from states that have larger outbreaks, and it's based on metrics. And so right now, I believe there's about 34, 33 states that are on that list where if you come back, you have to quarantine yourself for 2 weeks before you're able to participate in other activities. I also think there's been a large, relatively compliant, the citizenry, the people have been relatively compliant with the mask requirements. Masks are worn everywhere, certainly worn on mass transit, and certainly worn when you come to school or when you're doing daily activities, and when you're going inside. You don't see the kind of non-compliance that we see on the news from other states here, and I think that's probably the primary reason why we've been able to keep that transmission rate really low. Unlike what was talked about before in South Korea, almost all of the testing and tracing that they've done, they're able to tell where the infection has come from. And so you don't see evidence that the infection is coming from places like the subway or the buses. And I think people are feeling more confident that it's, you can never say something is safe, but it's safe enough for you to use mass transit to get around. And those of you who know New York know that the subway and the bus, really the subway in itself is people call it the blood vessels of the city. It relies on that ability to get around. And I think that that's been working, but we have had issues. We've had now 2 SUNY institutions that have had to, one is on pause for 2 weeks because of an outbreak. One, they completely shut down for the fall semester and went back to virtual learning because of outbreaks. And at that particular campus, there was even pictures on the news this past weekend of students still having parties and getting together in the town around the college, even though they've completely shut down in-person learning. So, the town gown relations in some of our upstate campuses have become really difficult as they try to figure out, this balancing act. I'll give you an example. Students who group of 5 to 8 students who are living in a house and they're sitting out on the lawn. Those 8 people live together. They're able to go to restaurants together, right? And they take off their mask at the restaurant, but yet they're sitting there on the lawn and have the police called on them because they're having a party. Even though it's the 8 people who live there, it's not a party. And when the police arrive, even the police don't necessarily know what to do because 8 people is not considered a gathering. It's 25 people. So there's a lot of this back and forth and trying to adjust these restrictions and adjust these requirements for people so that we continue to maintain a safe environment in New York that doesn't have those transmission risks. But there is a lot of, they also are very quick, by the way, to attack spikes. They've noticed some spikes in the city over this past week, and they send out testers into those areas, do testing. And the last time that this happened a couple of weeks ago, they found out that virtually all the people that caused the spike goal got it from the same place, and they were able to track it down. So that seems to be working in New York. And I think people have been incredibly resilient. There's been a lot of frustration about the restrictions. Obviously, people are at the point where we've been doing these restrictions since March to various levels. And people want to be able to see each other and want that socialization. Certainly kids want that socialization and don't necessarily understand why they can't see their friends or why they can't go back to school. But I think there's a lot of resilience here in people being able to adapt and adjust to the environment that we have.
Absolutely. I think that's definitely a very New York characteristic, and something that I think has helped us as a community here. And I think you bring up such good points, you know, and this is completely uncharted, you know, waters. We don't know what we don't know, and you know, everyone's sort of learning as they go. So certainly there has been the need to be sort of very resilient and to be able to adjust course as things, you know, come to light or new data is found. You know, wearing the mask has been proven in many cases to be such an essential piece of this puzzle in containing the virus. And, you know, the situation with education is certainly one that's become politicized, of course. You know, it's been blamed as the reason why the economy can't return to normalcy, because people can't get back to work if their kids are home with them. And, you know, there's been certainly a lot of controversy, and I know from my experiences that you hear stories where the educators haven't been consulted in the process at all. And so that just seems completely to be, you know, doesn't make any sense when you're thinking about how we're going to put all of this back together and really consider everyone and doing it well. And, you know, as Leticia mentioned, from a very thoughtful pedagogical place, and what's the impact here. And Joanna, you might have been seeing some of this as you've been working with teachers and helping them to prepare for a new year. Just as a reminder, you are in the Bay Area, which, like New York, has living situations that often come with a very high price tag, and especially when you're considering your price per square foot. So much like we've seen here in New York, there has been a historic exodus of folks leaving the Bay Area, especially as many tech companies are based there, and they've confirmed that people won't have to be back in the office until 2021, and that even in some cases that they will adopt this new remote working model for the future indefinitely, right? And so that's the new way. And of course, we've also seen the median age actually dropped from 18 to 30 in most of the Bay Area counties. So, and we can't ignore the fact that this has been yet another devastating fire season. So how have you managed to navigate all of these issues in the Bay Area over the past few months?
Thank you, and thank you for the summary. Everything you said is correct and true. A lot has changed in the 6 months since we've all gathered. I think a lot has also sort of stayed the same in terms of themes about knowing what's best for our families and for our schools and our community. In terms of what I've been doing, supporting teachers closing out the school year. Schools were closed in March. So there was sort of an idea about schools may finish in the spring at the end of the year, but that didn't happen. In the summer here in California, many of the summer camps were closed, a lot of summer schools. It was just, everyone was kind of home waiting, seeing how this all evolves, and thinking about the fall, which many schools started, you know, in the past month or so. Everyone, all schools here in California are remote. So the teachers who I am supporting and working with are building on what they learned in the spring about distance learning, and they are understanding what worked well in the spring, what can they build upon to start off with a strong school year, how can they get to know their students and support them And one of the things that I always remember from my time at Teachers College, and it applies in the classroom and in distance learning and remotely, is to focus not only on what you're teaching and how you're teaching it, but the process. Leticia mentioned the social emotional aspect of not only the teachers and parents and adults, but our children as well and our students, and understanding what they're going through and how this is different for them. So it is, again, as Jeffrey and all of you have said, it's just a different way of life now. We are, as educators, still trying to understand how to teach and how to conduct assessments virtually and how to know what the needs are. So that is something that I think that we can appreciate and understand, that everything is different, but somewhat also the same. We still have the same intentions. Here in California, it seems like a lot of people really are just staying home. We are here, we as a family get out for bike rides and fresh air. The restaurants are not open. As Jeffrey mentioned, a lot of outdoor dining opportunities, cute little umbrellas set up. I think they're now trying to start outdoor nail salons and those sorts of beauty services. So we'll see. Yeah, fall is coming. It doesn't feel like it right now, but again, as people have mentioned, that's something to think about in the coming months.
Absolutely. So that's certainly something that keeps me, on my toes in terms of not getting too complacent. A couple of you have touched on, how your TC preparation has helped you navigate this situation that you've been experiencing both professionally and personally. And I was wondering if you might all just share what your biggest lesson learned has been, whether or not that's been directly shaped by something you learned at TC, but what has been kind of the most profound thing that you've experienced? Sort of how have you come out the other side?
I can start. I think that, you also brought up, and I neglected to talk about the issues of racial division and protests that have certainly happened in New York and across the country. And I think when you combine that, if you look at that as a second pandemic, but one that's been going on certainly in this country for over 400 years, if not longer, I think what TC teaches us in terms of how to be a person and how to be an administrator and how to be a teacher is about resilience, is about adaptation, is about finding ways to make your little corner of the world, as I would say it, better. And I think that when we've had these discussions, certainly here, we've talked about the ways, both small and large, that you can make a difference and make a difference in the lives of other people, regardless of what their background is, where they come from, who they are. And I think that's an incredibly important and cherished lesson that we, I think, all take from Teachers College. This concept of social justice, I mean, you would hear that from the lectern at commencement, you hear it from, the lectern at orientation when you get there, and you heard it from people at Teachers College before it became something that had a national voice and a national conversation. And I cherish that ability, and I mean, just look at this group of people who are here right now. We always have a diversity of opinion, a diversity of people. Anytime we get together as alumni, anytime we get together in anything related to Teachers College. And I think that's incredibly important and valuable. And it also teaches that resilience, that you take a problem head on and you look at it and you work together to figure out solutions, as opposed to responding defensively or responding in a way that isn't going to get anything accomplished. And are those lessons all taught at Teachers College? I don't know that they're specifically directly taught, but it's working with colleagues and working with those faculty and working with your fellow alumni that bring those things to light. And I think those are all incredibly important.
Okay, for me, first of all, I really appreciate to TC, because thanks to TC, I could be an online learner between 2003 up to 2009. Just right after taking first semester, I had to come back to Korea because my husband had to serve the army. So I had to come back to Korea, but thanks to online courses in my major, instructional technology, I could continue my study for 7 years. And then I went back to the States and finished the doctoral study. So online learning experience, thanks to TC, I could experience. And also, second of all, this is very important, resilience. Because without that, I could not finish my doctoral study. It was really not easy. So yeah, so those resilience, I think I could get as an invisible muscle. So, which is very helpful for me as a leader to go through all the unexpected situations. So really appreciate that. And the last of all, even after graduation, the alumni connection, I think this is most important, because even inside one country after graduation, every year we have an event, so we could get, raise us up. We could be reminded of with other alumni, because after graduation, struggling in life, we could get, we could forget, right, where I studied and what I was working for. But I could be reminded of all the passions and then the humble attitude from other alumni. So that's such a fresh air to me. So I'm always learning from other alumni, the humble attitude, doing the best as a teacher, as a leader. So I really appreciate that. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that, Joohee.
Can I compliment? Joohee made me think of something because I graduated in '95. So I think they just came up with a new browser called Mosaic, and computers were just starting. But I took a class of distant learning. No, it was called adult learning, I think. And unfortunately, I tried to look up the name of the teacher. I don't have it in front. I was looking for my transcript. Anyway, because she was a good teacher. And at that class, she gave quite, she dedicated a lot of time to distance learning. And she was saying it's a big thing which is coming up. Here we are.
What being an alum from TC has helped me in what aspect? And I think there are two. And I think it's great that Vasily and Joohee brought this vanguard place that TC has in teaching and technology, and we're barely making it up. But there's another thing that TC is has the body of weight in, and it's a little bit of what Jeffrey said, which is how TC places value in the community and the individuals that are a part of it, in the identities. And what my program taught me was always to look at a learner and know that you have one fractal view of what's going on, and understand that this is a part of a bigger ecosystem. And that was never even a question. So for me to understand learning, I had to understand the world from that community aspect. And this is the thing that I learned, and because it's so ingrained in me that this is how we should see education, it was easier for me as an administrator to come up with ideas, solutions, and even questions that looked at that. So the power of the school community, of our teachers, of the parents at home, of the actual learners, and making sure that you're developing, you know, the new ecosystem to make place and see the power that those communities can bring together. And I think that kind of segues into the other thing that TC taught me, and just being for so long in a pandemic, is that technology is an incredible value, but how much value we have in our teachers. It's incredible. Like, if I have to say what's the real technology, I think people were able to see how teachers can reinvent themselves so fast, and how they can use Zoom, or they can use anything else, or teachers like create, but how much of a technology they are. And TC has been doing this for 130 years and telling the world, you know, teachers are essential. It's not going to be one technology that's going to help us replace. It's going to be, like Vasily said, you know, people operating into complex situations and creating choices, and how essential teachers are for that connection, for that space, for making people actually engage into learning. And those are two things that I'm so proud of having been at TC, because I see that into literally the way in the architecture of how my brain thinks as an educator. Sometimes I talk to people and they're like, wait, but like, how can you create all this? I was like, this opportunities for families. What about results? I was like, here's the thing. We never learned at TC. We learned how to see this as a systemic matter, and not just as one part of the problem. And I think that that's the characteristic. And if I have to say, like, this definitely prepared me for something unpreparable, which is a pandemic in the year I opened my school. But I could feel my TC backpack really heavy on my back during these past 6 months.
Heavy, but hopefully comforting.
Exactly.
Good. Anyone else have anything that they wanted to share?
I would just add that the word unprecedented is used so much in the past, certainly since February and March, and it's actually true, and it's okay to recognize that these things that are happening are not normal, and shouldn't be treated as if they are normal. But I think people are really tired of that word, unprecedented, because it's like every day there's a new unprecedented thing, and you're like, again today. But the resilience, you know, again, is an incredibly, you know, important part of the strength that we have to rely on to get through this.
That's such a good point, Jeffrey. And I think, you know, we'll be hearing at Academic Festival from Dr. Dale Atkins and Professor Doug Menon, and they'll be talking about, you know, coping with anxiety and stress. And that was one of the things, you know, that really came to light in their conversation, is the idea that this isn't normal. There is extra anxiety. We do have to learn how to cope with this and in a different and new way. And so, you know, I think that we have kind of grown tired of a lot of these, you know, cliches, working in unprecedented times. This is, you know, nothing's been normal, and, you know, the idea of a new normal, but none of this is normal. And it's okay, I think, to stop and really give ourselves a break and focus on that, you know, to Leticia's point, we have been equipped with these special skills and the ability to really think about things from a critical perspective and work together to build. I can't remember who said it. It might have also been Jeffrey or Leticia, that, you know, we're working to build a better community. And I think that is really at the heart of every TC grad. And so that's always just makes speaking with you all so special. And I wanted to kind of turn now to, you know, the idea that TC is a place that, because of the collaboration we have with faculty, with students, with alumni working as leaders in health, education, psychology, and leadership, TC is such a unique place that can really bring together thought leadership and work to help to serve the needs of not only our alumni community, but also education writ large, the world writ large. So if you were to ask TC to focus on something that could help, whether it's the alumni community or an educational community or just communities in general, what would you ask TC to consider in terms of how can we continue to respond? Are there studies that need to be done? Are there resources that we can be providing? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this.
Hi, I was going to comment before, and this plays in well to this prompt and question that you have. Something that I was thinking about in terms of how everyone is adapting and how things are different because of the situation we've all been thrown into, just how much I appreciate alumni events that are still taking place. They're not typical, let's meet and socialize in person over drinks and food and maybe have a speaker, but it's something like this where we can all hear from each other and hear different perspectives, and that's something that I value in the Teachers College community and the alumni network is, as you said, we all have different backgrounds. We all have something to offer and something to teach others about and learn about. So I appreciate how Teachers College has provided the online access and the virtual opportunities that you do. And I was thinking about how it's nice and sort of optimistic and promising to see just in general how museums or zoos are now doing live webcams and offering opportunities for people to still feel like they're doing what they were able to do before, but from home. So yeah, I think in terms of Teachers College and community alumni events and the online community, yeah, just hearing from all of those folks who have the expertise in areas that are relevant to what we're all facing. And I think some of the events have been really wonderful and kind of lighthearted, like the chocolate making and handmade hand lettering, but also more research-based and what are the next steps and how are we doing this and what is the importance? So thank you.
Of course. I'm glad to hear that those have been welcomed opportunities, and certainly it's something that we've been very mindful about, because we do know that's one of the things that brings our TC community together is the opportunity to have these lifelong learning experiences and learn from one another and learn as a community. So we're always accepting ideas. So that's obviously for the audience too. If there's ever things that are of interest to you, or if you have expertise of your own to share, we'd love to hear your ideas on how we can continue to shape that alumni programming. So thank you, Joanna. Anyone else?
Leticia made me think when she mentioned the backpack, her TC backpack, when the hard times came in, and that was something I was thinking about when preparing for the interview, because one of TC values, I mean, Teachers College values the teaching profession and the teacher collaboration. Obviously, this is at one of the pillars, and there's been remarkable innovation with the COVID response among teachers and how the educators responded to crisis, and all these little tricks and tips that we all have. And this is a good example. We could share them, and then Joohee could share our other people's experiences when talking to her teachers. I think Teachers College could help not streamline and not collect, but harness this innovation and maybe help us, not just the alumni, but all the other teachers, how to deal with these issues at challenging times. Maybe some policy advice would be good to administrators as well. When COVID strikes, this is what you do, 1, 2, 3. These little tricks, we all learned it by now, but it would be good to take stock of it and learn the future teachers and administrations, teach them this through our experiences. So that's where Teachers College could have a clear advantage. That's one.
That's wonderful. I'm cutting in Rosella here because I think that this is one of the benefits of this community is that not only we have the academic expertise, all the students that are there that are producing all the work, the teachers, the professors, but this network, right? Our alumni, just like Johanna said, we are actually the foot soldiers. We're there in the front lines. We can bring that back in, and I think it does it comes back to us as alumni to make that, and I think TC can help us. But we're also going to have to figure out how is the best way that we can connect. So like Johanna said, this is great. I feel nourished, I think that's the word, by being able to connect and see what's going on with you, who are my peers and that are actually making change happen right now. And maybe one of the things, Rosella, and I think for us as well, and I think Academic Festival is a great place to launch this, is that we need to figure out these ways of providing, harnessing, like you said, that backpack. And maybe we'll have to come up with different ways. Like this is a Zoom call that it was hard to schedule because we're literally in all different time zones. But that if we can do just this hour, for me as an administrator, somebody that's involved in working in education in so many fronts in my country, this has contributed so much to my practice. And I think that this is kind of like, I feel like it's a call for us alumni to find out if it's a WhatsApp group, if it's different chats, if it's a throughout the time chat, that we can connect. Like I want to be able to, in this new way, which is not a new way, but this current way of connecting, that we can find ways that I can just like pick up my call and be like, oh, I know somebody in San Francisco, and I can call her and see what she's doing. Or I can call Kevin and figure out what we're gonna do with our enrollment, because it's a mess. So I think just our backpack is full of 95,000 alum, and we need to be able to get them. So I love what you said, and I think that this is maybe we can start, Rosella. Put us to work. Let us help us connect.
Absolutely. You'll be getting a call.
And I can't actually wait. I mean, just to segue to that, I can't actually wait for Academic Festival. I was sort of disappointed initially that it wasn't in the spring, but now I'm really glad that it's now, because it's the perfect time. And it's great, even though this conversation is actually about COVID, but it's great to be able to participate in something that isn't going to be about COVID necessarily, although it's part of everything, of course. Absolutely. But I'm really, really looking forward to it. So that's something to look forward to.
Absolutely. Joohee, were you going to share something?
Yes, I want to add up just one more thing. As all of you know, from this COVID situation, we have a lot of problems in all the areas, politics, economics, right? But everyone agrees education part as one of the biggest problems. So Teachers College has the name. So I would say that it's the headquarters of the teachers all over the world. So I can say all of us already, we are leaders in a country, in an area. So Teachers College are launching the leaders to the world, all of the world. But now, as a person graduated and working on the field, the life is not easy. Life is not simple. It's based on the research, that's definitely important, because that's a scientific, right? So validity and reliability. But also in the field, we need something more practical. So I can say that the teachers, it's not beyond the level, the teachers, how much they are ready to prepare technology. It's already life, just that they are in the middle of the technology. But now, at this point, they have the problems, the finding new problems, how to use, for example, the using the Zoom class, it's not all the solution. Using the Zoom, we have a bunch of problems, using Zoom classes, right? And how we can get the, students' attention more longer, and how we can keep the, level, as planned, like that. So technical part, how we can, create the online contents, effectively, and how we can provide some tips to the teachers. So all those are things, I don't know how, maybe you can make some, surface, I don't know, can provide some practical tips from all of the world so we can share. So we are from Teachers College, but most of teachers in Korea, they are not. But from us, they can learn and they can get the information. So I think a Teachers College can be a headquarters to spread out the good information based on the research and good practical ways. So so Teachers College, it has to think about, because we have a different stage. So comparing to before, maybe something new, something practical, so you could do something for the teachers all over the world. Yeah.
That's a fantastic reminder, Joohee, of TC's core, the two pillars of research, but also practical preparation. And I think
Right.
that's definitely a good thing to remind us of, that we can look to not only our faculty, but also our alumni. I love that idea of coming together to provide your own sort of best practices and what you would like to share with, the education community worldwide. That's a great idea.
This Rosella, this could be extended into sort of building on the concept of lifelong learning.
Absolutely.
Look at it as a software package. Many years ago, you would buy the piece of software and you use it. The same thing with Teachers College. You pay for your master's, you use it, and then you're gone.
Right.
And now they changed. Now you subscribe to your software. It's like a licensing fee, and you use it every year. So your education doesn't, your deal with TC doesn't stop when you graduate. It continues year after year after year after year. If you can buy this license to use TC, buy, acquire, it doesn't matter. I'm not talking money here. So if we could apply this principle to continuous learning, and if TC could get on board, there was something, a TED talk, I don't remember, they were talking about this concept of life after your graduation, academic life in terms of continuing learning.
Yeah,
being active with your school. It's more than just alumni.
Absolutely, that's such a great point, and I think it's right in line with what we've been thinking in terms of the administration at TC, and certainly something that we want to stay committed to. And if you saw, one of the things that was announced this summer was a change in our career services, the offerings that we provide to students and alumni. And so the career office has now been rebranded and relaunched as TC Next, which Next stands for Navigating and Exploring for Tomorrow. So the idea that professional development shouldn't end when you walk across that stage at convocation or graduation, always having a place to come back to TC and look for next steps or career support. And certainly that's something that is top of mind in our work in providing these content-based learning opportunities, but sort of, I think the need to go further and beyond that is definitely one that we're working to enhance, and finding ways to provide those very tangible and practical skills that can build on your TC preparation. So these are wonderful ideas, and certainly, if you have ideas on the specifics, I would love to hear those as well. Or always encourage, when you meet TC alumni in your lives and your travels, reminding them to look back to the alumni office at Teachers College, that we want to hear from people. We want to know what they need from us, and to be able to continue to serve those requests and those needs, and to fulfill that need for lifelong learning. And I think Leticia used the word nourishing, and I think it really is sort of this, feeding our education and feeding our souls and feeding that work that we do. So we're always open to more ideas and more ways to really fine tune and hone that work and make it meaningful, make it effective and engaging for alumni. So I certainly thank you for all of your ideas. Does anyone have anything else that they wanted to share? Any final thoughts, any closing comments?
I always have 100 comments, so you can't ask that. It's not.
I love that about you.
Luckily, I always want to talk. Again, I think that it's so great to hear from all of you. So maybe I just want to say thank you and comment how thankful I am for being a part of this. How much I think it enhances, it grants my own professional, but also my personal life. Being a part of this, we are one person, and I think that this little screen that we've been put, even though it restricts a lot of our tri-dimensional aspect, it does put us all in one place. My personal life, you see my bedroom, my dreams, my kids that come around, and also everything that I have to contribute as a professional. So thank you for the generosity and for sharing and for being a part of the same family that can contain us. So I feel very grateful. Thank you, Rosella, for organizing this and for inviting us.
My pleasure. Thank you all. I think, that sentiment of gratitude is certainly one that I feel strongly, not only for the 6 of you, but also for the entire TC alumni community, which I'm so excited to be part of you now. So that's exciting. It's always heartwarming to bring together a group of TC alumni to talk and to share and to learn. And I'm extremely grateful to all of you, and I'm grateful to the TC community, and I know we'll just continue to work together to build and to move forward and to take those skills that we've learned and really put them to good use. But I wanted to thank you all for sharing your experiences over the past few months, and I hope this serves as a reminder of where you come from, what your preparation is, and how you can really navigate whatever is going to come next. I think 2020 has certainly delivered one surprise after another, and we'll just brace ourselves and look forward and know that we have the skills, we know we have the preparation, and we have the resilience to navigate whatever comes our way. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you all of you.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
Big
have a good
virtual
day.
hugs to everyone.